Well, good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Post Sunday app where we talk about yesterday's sermon. And so we're glad to have Daniel with us today. We had our missions conference yesterday, beginning of that. And so Daniel started his series on the gospel. And so Daniel, why don't you just share a little bit for us about what your sermon was about?
Yeah, so we began looking at 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we're talking about how our gospel proclamation, or what our gospel proclamation should look like. We talked about how we need to do more than just be nice people, and we need to do more than just communicate some truths to people. We need to impart our very lives, as Paul and Silas did in Thessalonica. We need to impart our lives to the people to whom we're sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with.
That's good. There was a couple of his main points that he had that we got a couple questions on. One was that our gospel message needed to be bold and not empty, I believe is what you said.
Not
empty, but bold.
Yeah.
Right. That route he went. And then one of the questions on that someone had asked was in regards to proclaiming the gospel in the midst of suffering and conflict. It shows how we value the gospel or how much it means to us. And so this person just asked, what is maybe an example of what that would look like in our culture today, the value that we have, how much the gospel means to us in those situations?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of different ways, and one example might be family relationships. There are people in your family that may disagree with what you believe about the gospel, and as you say, you know what I believe about the gospel, as much as I love you, I love Jesus Christ even more, and so I'm willing to suffer some distance in our relationship. Or whenever I was talking with someone yesterday after church, and they were talking about how they used to work for a person who had some unethical things that they wanted to encourage them to do. And this person basically said, look, I can't do those things. Here's why I can't do those things. And you're unhappy with me because of this, but understand, because of what I believe about Jesus Christ, not only am I not going to do these unethical things to our clients or whatever, but I'm also not going to be unethical toward you. And so there's some, he suffered some loss. He didn't receive some promotions or some responsibilities he could have otherwise. And so there's a lot of different ways that as we're faithful to the gospel message and we're faithful to be the stewards that God has called us to do, it's going to cost us relationally and in other ways financially.
That's good. And even a question that someone else had this morning that came in was, how do you deal with the person who is maybe antagonistic or even just wants to quarrel? They say one thing and yours another, and so how do you be bold yet gentle in how you converse with them, how you leave things if you kind of come to a standstill? How do you do that effectively?
Right. And the passage we looked at was in keying off what we saw there in 1 Thessalonians. We came to 2 Timothy 2, where Paul tells Timothy, have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels, and the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach patiently, enduring evil. And so I think the first instruction there is to have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. And so as you recognize that there's a person who just wants to get into some things where they're trying to push a conflict, you say, you know what, I'm not going to really get involved in that, because I don't sense that we're really having a dialogue. We're really just having kind of the potential is we're going to have you ranting and me ranting, which isn't, I love you and I don't want to engage in that. And so I think there's that. We put the brakes on things before we know we're going into an area in which there isn't a profitable discussion. I think we also, as we get into a discussion and we sense that our heart attitude is getting more concerned with winning a fight than loving another person, we have to step back and say, boy, I think my motives are wrong here, and I need to step back. And then again, just this characteristic of not quarrelsome. As we enter into relationships, we say, my lifestyle is not going to be described as quarrelsome or argumentative. I want to be described as a peacemaker, as a person who is kind and gentle in my words. That doesn't mean that I say or I avoid saying things that are true. just means my attitude as I do it is not calculated to win an argument or to belittle another person or to create controversy.
That's good. That goes right with another question that someone asked in regards to evangelism. They use that phrase that might often be heard: share the gospel, and if you must, use words. Do you disagree with that philosophy, or is that just a way that we try to encourage someone to have contagious morality? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I would disagree with that statement. Use the gospel, and when necessary, use words. It's always necessary to use words for a person to understand the gospel. You haven't shared the gospel until you've used words. But if you're saying that my gospel witness needs to be accompanied by good works and needs to be accompanied by moral living, then I would say, well, yeah, I agree with that statement. But the gospel always includes a proclamation using words.
Yeah, one thing I've told my kids is as people look at you or observe your life, they should be able to see that one, something is different about you, but two, that hopefully you're a follower of Christ because of the things that you do. So that's good. As far as door-to-door evangelism, street evangelism, would you find that there's a place for that?
Yeah, I would say there are times where that's an appropriate method of sharing the gospel, but I'd also encourage people that's not the normative way that I think we see the gospel being shared in Scripture, and it's not. It certainly shouldn't be our only way. We shouldn't say, "Well, I've done evangelism because I've gone door to door." Well, in Scriptures we see Paul and engage in relationships with people. There's lifestyle there's life impartation. There's sacrificial love, and those that relationship can't be developed just by knocking on someone's door. Not saying that it's wrong to do that or wrong to engage in street discussions or whatever, but I think that our normative means of sharing the gospel is with people that God has placed in relationship with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And then one last question that we had, and this challenged me in my thinking as well, as we talk about in relation to our church just being a growing church and desiring to continue to focus our ministries on the right things. Is there a way or different things that you would encourage as we would ensure about keeping our focus on the gospel as we would grow or as we would evaluate ministries, or how we would do that?
It's a good question. I think there's a couple elements to it. One, I think we as all of us who are members of Bethany need to consider carefully what ministries excite us. Am I excited about a ministry because it's it'll benefit me personally? I'm excited about a playground ministry because I have kids that need a playground, or
right.
What are the things that excite me about a ministry? Is my excitement on the ability to sacrifice and provide and care for others? And so there's that. I think you pray for your leaders. Pray for those who are in leadership, that our focus would continue to be on being good stewards of the gospel, not on growing our name or exalting our reputation, but that our goal would always be that Christ's name is magnified and glorified. And it's as I mentioned yesterday, it's a hard thing, because so often we can tell ourselves, well, the best way for Christ to be exalted is for me to be exalted because everyone knows that I'm a Christian. And so, the best way for Christ to be exalted is for Bethany Community to have a really good reputation and grow, and it's subtle, but it's the consequences are deadly.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I would encourage you to come back next week. Daniel will continue our sermon series here for the 2 weeks on the missions conference, and so encourage you to join us next Sunday. Have a good day.